Welcome to the second part of the Pokemon Pokédex tutorial, and in this video we're going to be going over how to create the UI so that we can create a navigation list and show all of the Pokemons available in a nice list with the icons. And to get started, we're going to go ahead and get rid of everything inside here, and we're just going to insert a navigation view so that the program does not crash. But of course we have a few state variables that we have to create. So add state var, and the first one has to be a list of the Pokemon entry. So inside here, we're going to type in Pokemon entry, and we need to instantiate it. Then we can go ahead and create another state variable, which will equal var search text, and this will be used for the search bar. We need to provide a binding variable such as this one over here to make it work. And let's close the sidebar so we have some more space. Now the first thing we need to create inside the navigation view is a list. And since we're going to turn it into a searchable view, we're going to have to add some specifications that make sure that we search for the letters that we're typing in to the search bar. But first we're going to go ahead and make this searchable, and the text is going to be set to the search text. Then we can also give this a navigation title because it looks quite empty at the moment, which will be set to Pokédex UI. And of course you can change that to whatever you want. Now we have that very native iOS search bar right here at the top along with the navigation title, so we're off to a good start. And there's actually one other thing we should do, and that's every time this list appears, we want to call onAppear. So onAppear, and we want to perform the following block. So create a closure and call the PokeAPI.getData, which will call the completion listener. So when we get that completion, so we're going to say for each Pokemon in that completion listener, return it and assign it to this new array, which is the self Pokemon, and that's going to equal Pokemon. Now, as I showed you earlier, we can go ahead and even iterate through this. So for Pokemon in Pokemon, we can just print the Pokemon.url name or the ID. So just go ahead and do that, run the program, so we can just see that everything's working correctly. So now the app loads with a search bar. There's no content yet because we've not created the list, of course. But if we go back to our console, we will have everything we asked for earlier, which are all of the Pokemon names. So we can minimize that and actually get rid of this because we know that everything works as it should. But the next thing to do is to create a for each loop, and this one will be a bit more special because we also have the search box that we want to use. So to make that work, we need to call search text and check if it's equal to nothing. And if it is, we're just going to return the entire Pokemon array. Otherwise, we're going to return the Pokemon.filter. And inside here, we need to create a closure. So the closure is going to contain a placeholder.name.contains. And here we want to include the search text.lowercase. So this is just going to take care of making sure that if it's empty, we're going to show all of the Pokemon. Otherwise, if it's not empty, the search bar, of course, it's going to return the filtered list that only contains the letters that we have included. Then we need to create another closure right here. And in this closure, we can type in entry in and then the following code. So the first thing we'll create is an HStack. And inside the HStack, we need an image. But for now, we'll just create a placeholder called circle. And this is where we will insert the image later. So we'll just type in Pokemon image. Then we want to create a navigation link. And this navigation link is going to contain first an interpolated string of entry.name, and we want to capitalize it. We have to do that outside, of course. .capitalized. And the destination is going to be set as a text view that says detail view for \entry.name. So as you can see so far, we have this very ugly list of all the Pokemon and some random circle. If we run the program, it should already start working, but it doesn't even look half as good as what we had earlier. So of course, if we click on Charmeleon, it will say detail view for Charmeleon, and we can go through this entire list and see all of the Pokemon that we have. such as Bellsprout, and so on. If we go all the way to the top, we can go ahead and already search for other Pokemon, such as Charizard. And as you can see, as we type, it's going to filter the results and show us the correct response. We can even go for Articuno again, and it will take us all the way down there. And the cool thing about this search engine is that it doesn't just check for the exact string, it also checks for occurrences of art inside other words. So as you can see, Wartortle or Wartortle has war in it, and it still picks it up even though it doesn't start with A. So far the functionality is working perfect. We just need to make sure that we can make the image work now. So let's go back to our app, and we need to open the sidebar and create one new view. And click Command+N and create a new SwiftUI view. And this one's going to be called Pokemon Image. And click on Create. So inside here, we can go ahead and close the sidebar for some added space and resume the preview. Now, to make this work, we're going to have to specify an image link. So that's going to equal an empty string initially, but the user must specify it because this is a struct. So every time we create the Pokemon image view, it's going to require it as a parameter. And then we have a state object that says private var Pokemon sprite. And that will also equal an empty string. Now, the first thing we're going to do is create a function under the body that says getSprite. And it's going to get a URL of type string, and we're going to create a temp sprite inside here, which is going to be an optional string, just in case there's a chance that there's no URL. Of course, in this API, it looks like we're guaranteed that there will be one, but I just want to handle it in case there isn't. Then down here, we're going to type in Pokemon selected API dot get data, and for the URL, we're going to just specify the URL. And we don't need to specify a completion listener, so we can get rid of that and create a closure. So for the sprite in this Pokemon selected API, we're going to assign the value to temp sprite, the sprite.frontDefault. Then we're going to go ahead and say that the self.Pokemon sprite should equal the temp sprite. Else, it should be a placeholder. And here you can insert your own PNG or whatever placeholder you actually want there to be. But now with this function, we can actually call and retrieve the image for each one of these URLs. So now we can go ahead and create the image. So inside the body, we're going to replace the text view with an async image. And the URL is going to be a URL which takes one parameter, which is string. And that's going to be the Pokemon sprite. Next, we're going to say that this entire image should have a frame and width and height of 75. But there's a few other things we actually have to do. As you can see right now, we only have a weird rectangle there. But the other things we actually have to do is make sure that we can cache the URLs, because we don't want to make an API request each time we get a new URL. We want to use the old URLs. And if you get even more sophisticated, you'll be able to cache the images. But to keep this program simple, we're just going to save the URLs. So inside here, we're going to go ahead and type in onAppear. And we don't need this part here. So we need to perform this action. So we're going to create some loaded data. So let loaded data equal user defaults.standard.string for key image link. Now we're going to go ahead and say if loaded data is equal to nil, that means there is no loaded data for the current image link, which means we did not cache the result yet. But that also means we have to go ahead and get the sprite. So we're going to have to make a network request. And we have to say we want to get the sprite for this image link. But since we're making a new one, we can go ahead and call user defaults standard.set. And here we're going to set the image link, which is a URL for the key image link. And since each one of these URLs are unique, the key is always going to be unique, so we can always use that as a key. So this is going to happen if we load an image for the first time. And to make this a little bit more easier to understand, we're going to print new URL, caching, and each time we run into a new URL, it's going to cache it. Else, it's going to load the old one. So get sprite URL for the loaded data. And of course, we're going to go ahead and print using cached URL. And finally, I want to make this square actually into a circle. So clip shape and say circle, followed by a foreground color of color.gray with an opacity of 0.60. And we are getting an error because, and Swift is giving us an error because loaded data needs to be forced unwrapped, because we already made the check over here, which means we can guarantee that this will be fine. But if we run the program, you should get a very light gray circle, which I think looks great in the app itself. But now we can go back to our content view. And inside here, we're going to replace the circle with the actual Pokemon. Here we have the circle that I mentioned earlier, and we want to replace this entire section with the Pokemon image struct. So type in Pokemon image, and as I mentioned earlier, we need to provide an image link, which is just going to be the string of the / interpolated entry.url. So we can actually run that, and it should change everything to a gray circle, but the padding is a bit off. We also want to make sure that there's some space between the text and the picture. So here we'll go ahead and type in padding.trailing and give it 20 as the padding. So we have some more space. And if we actually go ahead and run that in the live preview, we should get all of the Pokemons actually loading inside the app. And if we click on Ivysaur, it will take us to a detail view for Ivysaur. And we can actually search for other Pokemon such as Articuno. And here we have Articuno, and it'll say detail view for Articuno. But of course, this looks better if we actually run the app. The live preview is very unreliable, but good for quick tests. So finally, we have the full app here. And as you can see, you can scroll, you can find all the Pokemons your heart desires, whatever your favorite Pokemon is. Definitely remember to leave a comment about your favorite Pokemon. But as you can see, we can click on Arcanine, and it will give us the detail view, which as a bonus project, I recommend you actually add the real details of the Pokemon. Explore the API, make another API request, and make sure it stays there. Another challenge for you that you can follow for this app is learning how to cache the images. As you can see, each time we actually go down, it's loading new images. And you don't have to do this each time. It actually wastes a lot of resources to have to call the image each time you run into it. And as you can see, even if we go down and up, it's going to continue loading them. It's going to load them as we scroll into them. And also, if we go back, you can see that all the print statements have been used here. The first time you run into an image, it's going to say new URL caching. And then once we run into the image once again, it's going to say using the cached URL. So far, that is the only optimization we've done. But again, it's very important you learn how to cache the images because it is really wasting a lot of resources to have to download these every single time we run into them. But as a starter project, I think this was wonderful. Of course, let me know what you guys think. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.